Hello and welcome to At the Bar with TSR, and I'm joined by Isaac, United Cloud today. We're in Greenwood Sports Bar, just outside London Victoria Station, Isaac. And not to mention a couple of Moretti's here. You get one for a friend, you get one completely free, mate. And I've got one for a mate here. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's a lovely pint. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Obviously, United beat Wigan last night in the FA Cup. Pretty routine, so I was happy seeing that. I didn't get to go, unfortunately, but I think, back in the FA Cup, in the next round now. Hopefully that's a trophy we can actually compete for after what's been a pretty disastrous season so far.
Yeah, we'll start with the disastrous season thing before we get into the FA Cup, because there's so much stuff about the FA Cup that I want to talk about. But United so far out of Champions League, should I say? Yeah. Difficult start in the Premier League. Really, probably would be wanting a little bit more. Does that put emphasis on the FA Cup? Is Ten Hag almost wanting now a major trophy somewhere else apart from obviously Europe?
I mean, I think if you asked any Manchester United fan before the season, they'd have been kind of assuming that having improved in our striker and goalkeeper position, very important positions in the spine of our team, where we had weaknesses last season, and bringing in a player like Kobbie Mainoo into the first team, who's obviously got such a plethora of skills, Mason Mount joining the squad, Sofiane Amrabat, who was brilliant in the World Cup. You think, well, hang on, this is a Manchester United team who should be doing better than last season's third place finish. And Ten Hag has said that he felt that United overachieved last season, and maybe there is a semblance of truth to that. But yeah, undeniably, people would have expected us to be competing for the league title, to be at least in the knockout stages of the Champions League, at the very least, let alone not going out of the group completely and not even going to the Europa League. It was a disaster in that competition. So yeah, I think well below expectations, and the FA Cup is the way out. You can salvage a season by winning the FA Cup. Very favourable draw in the next round. It's Eastleigh or Newport. So, you're looking at the fifth round already. Hopefully, Man City, Tottenham playing each other. Hopefully some of the big teams fall out of the competition, and, we can go one better than last year. I was there at Wembley. Heartbreaking. It was after, only 30 seconds at Gundogan or something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely disastrous. So, yeah, I think they'll be going for it. I think they'll definitely be putting all their eggs in the FA Cup basket now. So, I think it's definitely one to target, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think United you've obviously got a big transition period now.
Yeah.
You've turned into a project club, like everyone seems to be now. Arsenal have gone through it. Chelsea are now going through it. Whether you'd call that a project or not is completely down to everyone else's interpretation. But United are now in that boat, aren't they? So Jim Radcliffe is in. Big changes. Obviously, he's got his men in that he wants probably, and he wants different people to come in. There was talk of, I think there was Graham Potter, wasn't there, on the cards as well. United, though, away from Potter aside, that's the new thing? Is it stick with maybe Ten Hag, or is it find someone new eventually, and then it's going to be a transition from there on in?
I think one of the most significant criticisms that Ten Hag has come under, and I think it's quite a valid one, is his role in recruitment. Obviously, we signed Anthony, his former player at Ajax, for 100 million. And yeah, didn't score a league goal last year in 2023. So yeah, I think the idea would be to move Ten Hag away from recruitment. I mean, not to say that Ten Hag can't spot a good player, but some of the decisions that we've made where he's identified targets, and then our scouting department has been overlooked, and we've gone and signed his player, and we've ended up throwing loads of money at them because the strategy on Anthony was appalling. Now United are strategy focused. Sir Dave Brailsford is going to have a big role in that. He's someone who's worked with Jim Radcliffe ever since Radcliffe got involved in cycling. He was incredibly successful at Team Sky, winning back-to-back Tour de France's. I think he's won 4 or 5. Super successful team. And Brailsford's always had this idea of marginal gains, making sure you can make the absolute best out of every single situation you're in. Even here, how well are you pouring your pint of Moretti? That can influence the video, right? Every little tiny feature is important to Brailsford. Yeah. I think something like that, where it's really precise rather than, oh my God, we've missed out on Anthony by 2 months. We're now going to give them an extra 40 million quid to get him. More control, more precision in the transfer market, identification of talent, trying to find out the best profiles that complement the team, both on the pitch and off the pitch, of personality. I think that's the idea. And I think Ineos have a good track record in sport, obviously, of doing this sort of thing. We need to prove it at the highest level in football. I think Nice is second this season, but Manchester United is a different kettle of fish. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I think Radcliffe's not in it for the money, for sure. He's definitely in it because he wants United to do well.
Well, you've been guilty, haven't you, of the last years gone by, of just going for the big names because they'll sell the shirts and they'll give the most sort of appreciation from the fans, isn't it? That's all that's really mattered to United for such a long period of time now. That at some point, surely something had to change, and it has done. Whether it'll work or not is another story, and we could speculate that for ages, I'm sure. But we'll bring it to the now just for a bit, and we'll talk about United and the FA Cup. Obviously, last night against Wigan, at the time of recording this anyway, big controversy. No VAR in the FA Cup for the large majority anyway. I think it should have been this from the start. It should have been, if you're going to have it for everyone, it should be for everyone. If not, for nobody. To have it, sporadically in the FA Cup has been wrong in my opinion. But Bruno Fernandes, mate, was it a dive?
Well, I think he engineered the penalty.
He's engineered the penalty.
Bruno Fernandes knows what he's doing. He knows how to win a penalty. He knows how to, get in the referee's mind, whatever. But no, I don't think it was necessarily a dive. I think he was looking for it. He knew what he was doing on that little cutback, and fundamentally, his foot's been taken away from him, and he's lost his footing as a result of that. Now, I want to kind of go into the VAR point, because I do agree with you in that VAR it's either there or it's not, right?
Save yourself.
It's not. It's thankfully the sport needs to apply. I don't think that if VAR was there, that Anthony Taylor would have given the penalty. I don't think he would have, because I think he would have thought, right, I don't know if that's a penalty or not. It's not 100% clear to me. If it is a penalty, VAR will look at it and give it. And maybe he would have been sent to the screen. I don't know, but I think without VAR being there, he probably thought, right, well, I've got to be bold. I see that as Fernandes' leg being taken out. I'm giving it. I think it's a sort of thing where if he did give it and VAR was there, I don't think VAR would overturn it in the current climate. And that seems to be the case of quite a lot of these softer penalties. But then I'm not 100% convinced that if he didn't give it, VAR would have looked at it. Maybe it would have. Maybe he would have been sent to the monitor. But I think the whole problem of VAR and having VAR in some games versus not is a bigger problem for referees than anyone else, of course.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to officiate the game in a completely different way?
Yeah, it's an unfair test on the rest of everybody else in the tournament has a completely different way of getting there.
Absolutely.
So the rules aren't the same from the start. So how can you have some rules for some, and then if they're to play away from home or whatever the rule is now, they might not have it in the next round? That just completely makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to do one way or another, it has to be one way or another. In this sense, it has to be no VAR for the whole competition. We, a Brighton fan, me watching this against Stoke, it was probably one of the most enjoyable games to actually watch as a neutral. Not only because it's 4-2 and there's plenty of goals and whatever and we won, but the actual game itself was enjoyable. It was relatively, good to watch. There was no stop-starts. There was no big controversy. Referees and linos actually had to make a decision, and their decision mattered, which is one thing that I think, I don't know about you, but I think linesmen and referees particularly have almost stopped doing their job so much because they know that they've got the big blanket cover of VAR to save them.
Yeah.
I remember particularly, I think it was Palace away, and it was one of the most blatant things I've ever seen. I think it was Ayew was offside. The referee hadn't put his flag up. It didn't come to anything, and he actually ended up getting fouled, and Jack Hinchwood got a yellow card. In that whole move, Ayew could have got injured. Henchwood could have got injured. Hinchwood's got a yellow card, and Palace could have scored from a free kick that wasn't a free kick. Everyone can see it's offside, but the linesman's not put their flag up because they're waiting for VAR to check back on it.
Yeah.
Which obviously doesn't come if a free kick gets given anyway. So do you think there's actually a case for VAR has actually made these sort of linesmen, these referees, stop making their own decisions and just rely on VAR to get them out of the trouble, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think obviously there's an element of that, and I think especially when you're going between different matches, and in some games you have got VAR and some you haven't, it obviously is going to play in your mind. I'm generally quite a pragmatic person. Like, I think, let's have a compromise here and there in general, and I think that can apply to football. But I think if you're going to do VAR, you've got to be absolute with it.
Yeah.
Like, offsides, if you know that it's offside, why not have an automated system the whole time? Like, the technology is there.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, you've got to do it properly. And one of the ones that really annoys me all the time is the corners. Like, the ball goes out, and there's we saw Diogo Dalot get a red card for protesting a correct decision.
It's inconsistent in itself, that rule.
Absolutely. I think if the ball goes out of play, like the technology is there, it will not take you any longer than one. You can watch it on the TV yourself. And I know maybe it'll become trivialised, but you could see on the TV after one replay that the ball came off Mo Salah and Dalot shouldn't have been sent off. against Liverpool. I'm still angry about that.
Oh yeah.
You know, the same applies to corners all the time. People score from corners that shouldn't have been corners, and they get goal kicks that shouldn't have been goal kicks and should have been corners, and you go and score from the resulting attack up the other end. Like, you've got to be absolute for me. I think if you're going to use VAR, you've got to use it properly. And people will be, well, you know, that's taking away from the game. But I think if you do want VAR in this game, you need to be using it in a way which isn't inconsistent. The system is inherently inconsistent at the moment, right? If you've got inconsistencies across the actions in the game, how can you expect it to be consistent game on game like that? I think
agree.
you've got to be absolute.
And that's the trouble. It hasn't been for, 5 years now?
Yeah.
5 years this year. We've had VAR in the game. And that's half a decade of controversy, in my opinion. I don't think that there's been a single year, a single month, single week,
Barely a single game.
since it's been in where there hasn't been VAR this, VAR that. And people then get a little bit tired of the conversation and start calling people that talk about it moaners. But how many times does it have to keep going around in circles? I think, honestly, the officials take the blame in the complete, you know, everything considered. The amount of bad decisions is inexcusable at this point. But I think if you're to even get away from that, the way that the technology's been implemented is wrong. It's a game that struggles to have technology in it apart from goal line. And that's the only thing that's actually been added to football that's actually improved it, to be honest. And I think that since all of these new sort of rules have come in, how many tweaks of rules? I'd love to see a stat of how many rules have been tweaked since 2019. Because I remember, I think it was Kevin De Bruyne came out back when it all started, didn't he? And said, I remember I used to watch football for 13 years and I knew the rules and I didn't have to ever think about it. I just play football. He said, and now I don't know what the offside rule is. I don't know what handball rule is. And nor does anyone. You couldn't actually tell me what the official handball rule is. I couldn't tell you. No. As far as I'm concerned, as long as it doesn't hit your shoulder and it's arm down, it's handball. Then they're now saying, where are your arms placed? And you know what I mean? So I don't quite understand what's handball and what's not, what's offside and what's not. So I don't know. I feel like it's just added a bit more controversy than ever really before.
Yeah.
Do you think, you know, the proof maybe that VAR in FA Cup has actually been better without it in some games? I'm not saying to scrap the whole thing because they won't do that because there's been billions of pounds invested in it. But maybe there's a case for, surely at some point, common sense has to take over somewhere to start overruling stuff.
Yeah, potentially, but I don't think you should. In my view, you shouldn't do away with the system. I think you should go in even harder. I think you should be even more.
What do you mean by even harder?
Like, I think you need to be even more pedantic. Like, you can obviously the people operating VAR at the moment are unsure of the rules themselves because they are changing all the time, and you know the handball thing is a disgrace. Like, it's not clear what that is.
Yeah.
But for me, I think if you're going to use it, you've got to use it, but you've got to be all in, 100%. You've got to. Every single action needs to be looked at by it. It needs to be far more efficient. Have more people involved doing it. Have people doing specific actions. You know, have an offside VAR. Have a handball VAR. Have a penalty VAR.
Yeah.
Like, have somebody who's looking at every single action. Like, you know, there's even if it's only on the top level of football. Like, the statisticians watching the game in massive Opta warehouses. There's so many people watching individual actions in football.
Yeah.
People trained to do it. Why not use it to make a better game where you can scrutinise every single little decision, and that will only help the referees. You know, with relieving some pressure, if they know, right, look, I'm going to call everything as I see fit, but if I do get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. I think at the moment, referees are like, I can't make a mistake here because I know that VAR isn't actually powerful enough to correct me, so I'm just not going to do anything. And then you get a situation where referees have the exact opposite effect.
Yeah.
That a red card, for example, happens, and it's like, under the current laws, VAR can't even do anything about that. So I think you need to look at everything. If you're going to be right, you've got to be right. I think you've got to go all in. And for me, yeah, I'm all for the purism. You know, I'm all for pure football and vintage retro stuff. No VAR. Everyone takes each other's legs off every tackle. I'm all for that. But at the same time, if you are going to do it, you've got to do it properly.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it enough. It's not a thorough enough process.
Yeah. Do you agree with ex-pros being on VAR?
I don't know. I kind of get the idea. I can see the thinking behind it. Obviously, they've got to have intense training. Like, I think fundamentally, there are too many questions about the competency of the referees at the moment.
That's it. But then I think that the biggest problem is the rules are just overthought at this point. Like, there's too many things that, because let's face it, if me and you went down the local 3G here at Place of Football, and I go and okay, maybe I've gone in a little bit heavy on you, but I've taken the ball away, and it's no one's really complained about it. I've shook your hand as you stood up, but I've shook your hand as you stood up, and we go back to how it was before.
Yeah,
but it's a fine challenge.
yeah.
If you were to slow that down, because you've got a camera over there, a camera over here, and a camera over here, we've zoomed in and we've slowed it down to 0.00 of a second, and then we started looking at it and we're going, oh, actually, Ryan, you've got your studs up a little bit there, and you've just sort of gone in a little bit heavy on his ankle. The follow through. Now, don't even get me started on follow through, otherwise we'll be here till that camera's dead and the knees are dead as well. But that's I think where the game's gone, if you like, where those sort of things, because it's such a high intense game, or at least it was and still is at times, that those sort of things are going to happen, and you've just got to leave it.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. There is natural inconsistency. I think it's hard when the rules aren't defined, right?
Yeah.
What's the way around that? I don't know, because you can't. As I say, I think you've got to have an absolute rule. Like there cannot be. If there is any grey area, it's got to be minimised as much as possible. You can't. Yeah. At the moment, the grey area is this big, and there's a black and a white.
Well, no one actually knows, do they?
No one really knows.
Including me and you. We don't really know what's what.
So let's try and make things more defined. Let's spell out the rules to make it even more clear. I mean, I think that's what they're trying to do. Of course, that's what they're trying to do. But I think when you've got so many different, ulterior factors, you've got the fact that you don't trust who's using VAR, you don't trust the referees. You've got every single time that something goes against you, you've got a fan base on Twitter having a complete and utter uproar. So, the Arsenal fans every single game, like there's always something to complain about. Like all these different things feeding into it. It's so much pressure. There's so much pressure on it, and there's no chance you're ever gonna be able to define what's going on here. Let's just let's reset, start again. I don't care if you've got to write a new footballing constitution from scratch and just redefine the rules, because it's all it's gonna happen is it's gonna keep happening, going on and on and on, and then they're just gonna get rid of VAR. And when they get rid of VAR, they've wasted a massive investment, and they've got rid of technology, which has fundamentally, in many aspects of the game, has improved it. Offside. See that Jordi Alba goal that was on Twitter the other day? You're 10 yards offside.
Yeah.
Like that, VAR has got force for good, and people are being turned against it by all the ulterior factors which are making it into an evil.
That's true. No, it's fair. I'll move on from VAR, because otherwise this video would just end up being a VAR conversation.
It's so easy to do that.
It's true, but that's what it is, and I think that's what's wrong with it. For us to be able to sit here and probably talk for another half an hour on VAR goes to prove how much is wrong with it, and I think that's my trouble.
Yeah.
And I look at the FA Cup this weekend just gone, and I'm seeing games that are very enjoyable to watch. The Sunderland-Newcastle game was a joy to watch until sort of they started running away with Newcastle in the end, but first sort of 45 was really good fun to watch. So that sort of side of the game is great. Then you start to lose it again. You go back to the Premier League and you see these stupid decisions. You see this amount of time it's taken to get here and there, and I think that's when I start to lose it a bit. But we'll move back on to United just quickly. You wanted to mention a new man who's become a main man in Mainu. That's a great one, wasn't it?
Excellent, yeah.
What have you made of, in your words, the new Caicedo? Oh no, clear of Caicedo, wasn't it? You said
clear of Caicedo. I said to you. No, I think he's definitely a more multi-talented player than Caicedo, who's £100 million.
There you go. That's the social media clip right there.
Well, no, I think Mainu's got a higher ceiling than Caicedo for sure. I think United have got a £150 million asset on their hands here. It's crazy. And obviously, people will tell me, what you're talking about, it's been 10 games or so, but I'm not someone who sits down and watches academy football all the time, but I've known about Kobbie Mainoo since he was 14, 15 years old. He's been at Manchester United since he was 7, I think.
Yeah.
The way that he's developed is to no one's surprise. I mean, maybe people are surprised that he's playing so much this season. I was surprised he didn't play more last season.
Yeah.
He's exactly the profile that Ten Hag wants in a midfielder, in that he can, obviously any manager would want a multifaceted ball player, but mainly he's a guy who can take the ball with his back to goal, he can carry, progressive passing is excellent. He's someone who's so good in the duel, really, really high win rate, low centre of gravity, super good talent, and he's got pretty much everything you want in a modern midfielder anyway. I think he's fantastic, and I think he's ready for senior football. I think United should play him every single game. I think he's that good, and he's going to save us a lot of money in the market, and he's going to save us quite a lot of potential misses. You see these big midfielders, and not all of them work out when they go to their new clubs, and we've got one ready-made right there, settled in. I'm so excited to see what he does.
It's true though. It's a hard position, isn't it, to fill?
It is.
I mean, anyone, I think anyone's looking for that exactly right midfielder that's going to make everything work. To have someone coming up through the academy must be quite a special feeling.
Oh, yeah. I think you've got that attachment to him. You're willing him on to do well. He's like he's probably a player at the moment who unifies Manchester United fan base in such a time of disorganisation. I think every single Manchester United fan rates Kobbie Mainoo and believes he's going to go to the top.
I do rate him as well, just to say.
I think it's hard not to. You look at him; he just looks like he's 30 years old.
Yeah.
In how composed he is on the ball, and look, you can see as well. You can see some of his decision making, like when to press, when to go in on a man. It's not always right. Sometimes he picks the wrong pass where he's going too progressive, or he's going circulating the possession rather than going forward.
Yeah.
Sometimes he doesn't know when to carry, when to
it's
break,
youngsters,
break the lines.
though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Things take time.
They're
They're
little things, and physically as well. You can see that he needs to get more used to the difference in physicality at men's football, where he's not dominating everybody anymore, and he's more on a level. But he's got all the fundamentals physically to be completely dominant. And he's not especially big. He's got he's obviously very strong, but he's got that low centre of gravity, and he's got that ability to turn on the ball, which is so important to the way that he plays. And I don't know if you saw that clip against Wigan where he plucked it out of the air, flicked it over a man, took it down and slid in Pellistri. That was outstanding. And I think, he's got that sort of control over his body and the mastery of his biomechanics already, which he will get much better at. And you can the most exciting thing for me is that you can see the flaws in his game, and you can see how he's working on them all the time, even throughout the course of 90 minutes. In the actions that he performs, he's improving rapidly. He's rapidly adapting. He's got so much talent. Honestly, I think he's an elite level prospect, and we're so lucky to have him.
Yeah, I love that. I love the rapidly elite level prospect. I love when you've got someone like that in the squad that just gives you that sort of excitement. I think Hitcherwood's given me them sort of vibes. I'm getting that at Brighton at the moment.
Super versatile player, isn't he?
Yeah, no one quite knows him yet. He's been playing right back. He's an 8, and I think that's just in itself great.
Yeah.
But this isn't a Brighton episode. But as much as I'd love to talk about Hitcherwood, but you'll see him soon, and you'll be seeing him linked to every single club. I'm sure.
Yeah.
When Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, United, you name it, probably one on. But I don't know. There's something about him. He's from Worthing, which I think is brilliant. So he's a local boy, and hopefully he does stick around. But
it's something different, isn't it, when you've got that sort of you will them on even more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the kid went to I don't think he did go to my college in the end. Probably because he's too good. But I think he played for Worthing FC when I was at that college, and my mates played with him. So that goes to show literally how he is only a few years younger than me, and now playing at Brighton is absolutely insane. But mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah.
Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. We're not quite sure what we're going to do with this video yet, but it'll probably be on YouTube somewhere. Make sure you're following TSR United Cloud as well. And we'll see you very, very soon. And goodbye.